is going on and to be able to help him. I pray that you would give him your complete healing and bless him also as he is away this morning, and bless every person that is in this room. I pray that you would feed us this morning with the Word of God, that you would teach us things that would be helpful to your kingdom and to our good to know. Amen. All right. I was thinking the last couple of days about people who like to start things but do not like to finish things. And it just so happened that a couple of things happened yesterday that made me think even more about it, about people who like to start things but don't like to finish things. And it's so easy to do, and I think there's a certain kind of personality that likes this, and I am truly one of them. I so much enjoy at my business doing something new, and that's why we don't have space, because we're always trying to do something new, and there isn't room to put it. But continuing the things that you started 10 years ago sometimes are boring, and it's well, not to say it shouldn't be done, it's just sometimes kind of boring, and you get a lot of excitement and a lot of fun out of starting a new thing. And the unfortunate thing is I hire some really talented employees sometimes who have the same personality. And they will run 1,000 miles an hour if I give them something new to do. But it gets a little bit boring just doing one thing that has always been done. And so it causes a little bit of trouble sometimes, because they are excellent people but can't get done the things that I need the most, because that's drudgery. They want something new. And no, those are very good people to have on your staff when you're running a business, because they can help you keep on top of things and develop things and so on. But there's only so much that a person can do in that field. There's just only so much that can be done. And then you have to just do the everyday stuff every day. You have to do the everyday stuff. And it would be nice if there was more people whose personality was really gifted in the everyday stuff. Now, honest truth is there is quite a few people who have that type of personality as well. They don't like new things. It's too challenging for them. And their comfort zone is in the thing that they've done for the last 10 years. They like to go to work and they like to just simply do the thing that they have done. I have hired quite a few people over the years who relished going into the bakery and doing the dishes because they were comfortable there. It did not take them out of their box. And I cannot even imagine going to work and doing dishes every day. I would quit. I would just quit. I cannot imagine it. But there are people who come to work and that is what they want to do. That is what their being likes, because they know they can come to work without any challenges. There's nothing that they're going to feel like, I don't know how to do this, or how do I get through the day. They can be comfortable. And so there's that kind of personality. And there's nothing wrong with being one kind or the other kind of personality. We have different personalities, and it's good that we have different personalities, because in life we have to do all these things. But there are times in life that every person has to do the things that they started, and there is no way out. And if you fail to maintain the things that you started, the things you're supposed to do, you will become an absolute terrible person. The kind of person who is not serving God, is not doing right. You mistreat people, you mistreat everything, you mistreat everybody, and so on. And just one very, very, very simple example of that is you got married. Now, in that marriage, There are certain things that are going to be done now for the next 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years, however long you guys live. There are certain things that are necessary to do. That marriage needs to be built, it needs to be maintained, it needs to be protected, and there are certain things that go along with that even the Bible very clearly says that if you don't take care of your wife and your children and so on, you're worse than an infidel, and so on. So there are certain things that you must do now. And you know what's wrong with so many of the marriages in this country? Why there are so many divorces? It's because so many people are running their marriage the same way they are running their job. If I get bored, goodbye. If I don't like you anymore, goodbye. If I come to a mountain that I don't want to climb, goodbye. Now, we all would agree, sitting in this room, that is wrong, that we should not do that God says He does not like divorce, and that we are supposed to make that marriage work and stick with it until we die. Okay, we would all agree with that. But on the before side of marriage, it happens a lot too, where people will go through 6 girlfriends before they get married, or unfortunately, I've known girls who have a new boyfriend every month, and I'm not even sure how they do that, but I seriously, there are girls that in high school will have a new boyfriend every month. What's the issue? Why a new one? Why a new one all the time? Because you didn't make the other one work. Now, it could be that obviously in every situation, every case is different, and it could be that there is no way to make something work when you're dealing with a really rotten attituded person or something, and we need to fix something first before we fix a relationship. That may be, but in truth, if you go through multiple girlfriends, multiple boyfriends before you get married, I warn the person that you are marrying that you are unlikely to make it far in marriage either. I'm afraid that is going to be the case, that you're unlikely to make it very far, because if you couldn't figure out how to make it work with the first person you loved, how are you going to make it work with the person you ultimately married? Now, I do grant that these two things are not the same. They should not be treated the same. Sometimes in that early stage of learning to know a person, we don't know who that girl is that we are liking, or that boy is that we are liking. And that's why we date a little bit, get to know each other a little bit, and figure out if it's the person that we want to spend our lives with. And sometimes we figure out after a little while that it's definitely not, and that is a very good time to end that situation and to move out and go to something different. Okay? That is good. Don't marry a person that you can't get along with. But the problem is, why can't we get along with people? Well, the reason, honestly, most of the time that we can't get along with people is simply because when we come to a place where something becomes difficult, we quit doing it. We are not willing to spend the time that it takes to make work what we started. We're not willing. And if that's you this morning, your life is going to have some issues. It is not right for us as grown adult humans to run from trouble and to not make work that which God has given us to do. So there are things that are not sin, and there are things that are sin. For example, as we talk about marriage, God says it is wrong to divorce. That one's sin. If you're working a job and you quit your job and go work another job, that one isn't sin. But I can tell you right now that anybody who quits their job and goes and gets a different job too often is forming the wrong kind of character inside. and it's going to affect how you treat your marriage and how you treat your friends and all the other things in life that you deal with. We have a policy at our store when we take applications, and actually we take applications all the time because we're permanently hiring, but when we take applications, if somebody puts an application in and they have worked about 4 jobs or so in the last couple of years, their application gets put in a reject pile and they never get a phone call. We are not interested. We are not looking for somebody to come for 6 months and leave mad. We're not looking for that kind of help. Now, sometimes it happens anyway with the people that we hire. That does happen. But if you have on your application that you worked a job for 6 months and then a job for 6 months and then a job for 6 months, you don't even get a phone call. Unfortunately, well, we built this application to try to get a little bit of information out of the person as to who they were, and so there's room to list 3 jobs on the application they turn in, and each place it says reason for leaving for the last job, and some of the craziest things get filled out in that reason for leaving. But one of the things that gets me going is they have a job, they worked it for 3 months, and the reason for leaving is better pay. And the next job they fill out, they say what they are making there. And it's 25 cents an hour higher than the one they quit. Better pay? I mean, when have you ever heard of potentially learning to become something at a job so you can get better pay that's warranted, instead of leaving because somebody else will give you a quarter? I mean, it's nonsense. And then the next job, they fill out another job, and this one says they left the other job for better pay, and that one maybe they got 50 cents or something, and they don't have any idea that actually sticking with a job long term is where you will get the most better pay, but they never stay long enough at a job to figure that out. Now, again, as I said, there isn't anything wrong. It is not sin to quit a job. It's not sin to quit a job and go to another job. I like people who have the character, and again, this is not, don't apply this in a wrong place, because I've quit jobs in my life twice. I quit jobs in my life twice. Don't apply this in the place where it doesn't fit. But if you are going to come to me and say, what kind of a character should I build in myself? I would say, build the kind of character when you get in the groove that you fit in, right? I mean, maybe if you start out doing dishes when you're 14, you don't stick with that job for the rest of your life. That's probably a great job for another young kid to take over at some point. But when you get into that job that fits you, and you get into that groove and you become a farmer or a mechanic or whatever it is that you find you enjoy and you do well at, stick with it for the rest of your life. We are in an age right now where it is almost impossible to hire good services because there's nobody out there doing anything. I think, don't quote me on this, I'm just going by memory now. I believe, I think all of you guys know that when I was like in my young 20s, I was towing for a couple of years. And so I got to go to every shop in town all day long. I was in the dealerships, I was in the body shops and so on. My memory is that 4 body shops have closed in Rhinelander in the last 5 years. These were all body shops that were open when I was 20 years old. 4 of them closed. There was nobody to take them over. None of their employees wanted to buy the business. Nobody wanted it. They shut down because these people got old. They retired. And among the young people growing up that it had worked for them or whatever for the last 30 years, nobody wanted to do it. These are flip-floppers. They work at one job for 3 years and then another job for 2 years, and then they do this for a couple of years, they do that for a couple of years, and there isn't anybody who dedicated themselves to become something so that they knew an industry and were able to do it and run it and so on. There was nobody. There's nobody to do it. And we don't find that body shop story is just an example, because it's happening all over. The simplest things. You know how hard people are having right now finding a babysitter when they want to go to work and leave their kids at a daycare? I have employees struggling all the time. Can't get a good daycare. Babysitting is one of the simplest jobs that even a stay-at-home mom can do. Little girls can do it. Young girls that aren't even grown up yet. Babysitting is one of the easiest, simplest things to do. And you know what? People are getting paid good for it too. Nobody's doing it anymore. Can't find babysitters. Now, that's not true that nobody's doing it, because some people are. Just not nearly enough as the industry demands. And so we have this problem. We never push ourselves as a society to become what we could become if we dedicated ourselves to a task. And I see the biggest failure in this issue in the fact that we like to start things. We don't like to finish things. Now that is my introduction to why I'm speaking on this subject. You can go to Hebrews chapter 12. And beginning in the beginning of Hebrews chapter 12, it says, "Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight, and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him that endured such contradiction of sinners against himself, lest ye be wearied and faint in your minds." 3 simple verses here. The one tells us about Jesus, who became the author of eternal salvation. We know what he did. He came down to earth. He spent a few years here. He was taken and crucified. He died there on the cross. They buried him. He rose again. And in doing so, he became the author of eternal salvation to them that believe. But he didn't quit there. He went on from that moment and is continuing on through all of time to perfect in his saints that which he started on the cross. That's his whole work right now. Now, we would be in some pretty serious trouble if Jesus handed us a ticket to salvation and then went away and played golf. We wouldn't make it. If there was nobody fighting for us and nobody praying for us and nobody watching out for us and strengthening us and giving us the Spirit and all the things that we need as Christians, if there was nobody doing that, there would be nobody that would make it to heaven. So Jesus starts this work, and he does a great job, something that the ages has recorded for us that will be talked about through all of eternity, the life and death of Jesus Christ. He did a great job in what he did. That was just the beginning. He took on an eternal work. As long as earth exists, he took on an eternal work to maintain that which he started. That's verse 1. Actually, that's verse 2. Sorry. Verse 1 was telling us that we have a race to run. Now, in the same idea, we talked for a minute earlier about people who like to quit jobs and start new jobs. I wonder if it would be kind of funny to apply this to running a race. I want you to just imagine that Dan is just the fastest runner in the world. And he is so proud of himself. But he gets started out running a race. And he gets a mile down the road. And he's like, I don't like this race. I don't like the boss. I don't like the people I'm running with. The boy that's next to me is ugly. I'm going to get in a different race. And so he exits out the side. And he goes to a different race, and he starts running that race, and he goes for a little while, and he gets thirsty, and he's like, oh boy, forgot to get a drink. I think I'm just going to be done with this race. And he goes out. And he goes down the road, and he finds another race, and he gets in that race. And by that time, he gets a running, and he gets hungry. And he's like, I should have gotten something to eat. I'm just not using my head today. And he gets out of that race, and he goes and there's a cool store, and he buys some good food, and he sits down and eats, and he says tomorrow's going to be different. So tomorrow he gets up the next day, and he gets up and he says, I'm going to win a race today. And he goes and he finds the coolest race he can find. He gets in line, and he gets a going, and he gets partway through that race, and then the sun gets hot, and it's 90 degrees that day, and he's sweating, and he didn't wear cool enough clothes, and he said, no, not today. And he drops out. I'll find a different race. How many races is Dan going to win? He's never going to win a race. And this is what we're talking about here. Jesus didn't just author our faith, he finished our faith. And when he tells us to run a race, when you run a race, there's a certain point at which you start, and there's a certain point at which you end. And there is nothing you can do in between the start and the finish. It's a commitment. It's a commitment. I started here, I'm finishing there. I'm not changing what I'm doing until I get to the finish. And then there's verse 3. Consider him that endured such contradiction of sinners, lest ye be wearied. Because in every race that anyone ever starts, they get tired. Nobody finishes the race without being tired. Or you didn't give it anywhere near what you should have given it. If you start out to live the Christian life, you're going to get tired one day. If you get married, you're going to get tired one day when the kids come. If you have kids, you're going to get tired all days. If you start a business, you're going to get tired. If you work a job, you're going to get tired. If you farm, you're going to get tired. Whatever you do, you're going to get tired one day. And there comes a point in almost anything that we do that weariness sets in beyond our body. It reaches to the soul. And we want to give up. And God specifically brings us face to face with our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, who is doing the most wearisome job that earth ever saw, trying to keep his people holy. And he said, just imagine Jesus and the work that he did, how he endured contradiction of sinners, and how he continues on throughout time trying to build his church when all the church ever wants to do is move away from the truth. And Jesus continues on and on and on. Consider Jesus, because someday you're going to be weary. And I want you to have something to compare yourself to so that you'll keep going. Because we need to be finishers. We don't just want to be starters, we want to be finishers. Now in Luke chapter 14, we'll read a few verses in Luke chapter 14, beginning in verse 25. It says, there went great multitudes with him, and he turned and said unto them, if any man come to me and hate not his father and mother and wife and children and brethren and sisters, yea, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. And whosoever doth not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you intending to build a tower sitteth not down first, and counteth the cost, whether he have sufficient to finish it? lest haply after he hath laid the foundation and is not able to finish it, all that behold it begin to mock him, saying, This man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king going to make war against another king sitteth not down first and consulteth whether he be able with 10,000 to meet him that cometh with 20,000? Or else, while the other is yet a great way off, he sendeth an ambassage and desireth conditions of peace. So likewise, whosoever he be of you that forsaketh not all that he hath, he cannot be my disciple. This is a good starting point for anybody who wants to live the Christian life. The first thing that we consider when we come to Jesus Christ is, are we willing to forsake everything that we have? Because if we are not willing to forsake everything that we have, we are going to get started. And we're going to come to a point where where we're going to come face to face with something that we have to do to maintain our Christian testimony in life, and we're not going to be willing to do it, and we're going to drop out. And then we're going to look like a dumb person who started to build a tower, but he didn't have what he needed to finish it, and so there his tower sits half done, and he had to walk away from it and abandoned it because he couldn't do it. We're going to look like him when we started to live our Christian life, but weren't actually willing to do what it was going to take. And so Jesus puts out very plainly, if you're going to come after me, this is the starting point. Forsake everything that you have. That's your starting point. Because what you start, you need to finish. Jesus mentions of himself in John chapter 4 and verse 31 that he finishes what he starts. It says, in the meanwhile, verse 31, in the meanwhile his disciples prayed him, saying, Master, eat. But he said unto them, I have meat to eat that ye know not of. Therefore said the disciples one to another, Hath any man brought him aught to eat? Jesus saith unto them, My meat is to do the will of him that sent me, and to finish his work. This, of course, is in the story where he went to Samaria. The Samaritan woman comes to the well. He preaches the gospel to her. She believes. She goes back to the city, and she gets a whole bunch of the other people in the city to be believers, and a whole assembly of people of God are created that day in Samaria because Jesus was worried about the woman that came to the well. While all the disciples were concerned about what they were going to have for supper, Jesus was worried about the souls of men. And he said to the disciples when they came back and said, Here's something for you to eat. Please eat. He said, I'm busy. I can't eat right now. The weight of the city of Samaria is on my shoulders. I'm going to finish what I started. The woman's coming back. She's bringing all the men of the city. That hadn't happened yet. They're still waiting for this. The woman's coming back, and she's going to bring all the men of the city, and they're going to come and they're going to inquire about who this person is that this woman met at the well. I've got a work to do. I have a work to finish. And so it was. That is the work of Christ. Now, I want to take you to the Old Testament for a few minutes, and beginning in Exodus chapter 27, we have a small passage here about the light in the tabernacle. Exodus chapter 27 and verse 20. And thou shalt command the children of Israel that they bring thee pure oil, olive, beaten, for the light, to cause the lamp to burn always. In the tabernacle of the congregation without the veil, which is before the testimony, Aaron and his sons shall order it from evening to morning before the Lord. It shall be a statute forever unto their generations on the behalf of the children of Israel. So this light that they put in the tabernacle, they were to light in the evening every day, and it was to burn all night, every night. No exceptions. It was never to go out. There was always to be oil there. It was a permanent thing that they were to do for all of their existence as the people of God in Israel. So they have this tabernacle in the wilderness. Well, they get into the promised land eventually, and the tabernacle is set up there. And I don't know whatever becomes of it. It doesn't appear like history has ever left us that information, what happens to the tabernacle. But at some point, they don't have it anymore. And then Solomon builds a magnificent temple. And in that magnificent temple that Solomon builds, there's also lights. And they bring oil to the temple, and they light the lamps, and they keep the lamps burning, and so on. And then that temple, because Israel sins and nations come and attack them and destroy them, that temple is destroyed. And then many, many, many years later, they are attempting to build another temple. And in that attempt to build that temple, they run into some pretty deep discouragement and depression. Israel's not really a nation anymore. Their nation was destroyed. Jerusalem is destroyed. They were carried away captives and spent 70 years living in Babylon. Now there's only a few people that are returned. They're living in poverty. They've got houses to build and gardens to grow for existence. And so the temple, they spend 40 years building that temple. But amidst the time that they spend building that temple, they get discouraged about it. And two prophets are sent by God, one of them Haggai and the other one Zechariah. And these two prophets come and preach to them the word of the Lord. God has to come and encourage them to continue the work and to finish the work which he had told them to start. So in Haggai chapter 1 and verse 1, it says, "In the 2nd year of Darius the king, in the 6th month, in the 1st day of the month, came the word of the Lord by Haggai the prophet unto Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua the son of Josedek the high priest, saying, Thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, This people say the time is not come, the time that the Lord's house should be built. Then came the word of the Lord by Haggai the prophet, saying, Is it time for you, O ye, to dwell in your sealed houses, and this house lie waste?" Now he goes on and he preaches to them a bunch, and he talks to them about the fact that God was troubling them because they had neglected the house of God and so on. We're not going to read all that. We're catching the fact that they had come back to Jerusalem to build the temple. That was what they had been sent to do. And all they had done was they had come back and they had laid a foundation. And after they had laid the foundation, they had gotten discouraged about it. And they, in their poverty and trouble, turned to their own things and began to build their own houses. And he says, why is it time for you to dwell in houses that are finished? Houses that are completed. You've got roofs and ceilings on your houses. But this house, God's house, only has the foundation. You didn't do anything more. Why do you say it's not time to build God's house? But it was time to build your house. First they start the temple, and then they abandon it, and then they go to their own houses. But when they went to their own houses, they finished them. But they didn't finish what they started for the Lord. So, in Zechariah, we'll go there next, Zechariah chapter 4. We'll read a few verses there in Zechariah chapter 4. He also prophesies. And this is what happens in verse 1. "And the angel that talked with me came again and waked me as a man is wakened out of his sleep. And he said unto me, What seest thou? And I said, I have looked, and behold, a candlestick all of gold, with a bowl upon the top of it, and his 7 lamps thereon, and 7 pipes to the 7 lamps which are upon the top thereof, and 2 olive trees by it, one upon the right side of the bowl, and the other upon the left side thereof. And I answered and spake to the angel that talked with me, saying, What are these, my Lord? And the angel that talked with me answered and said unto me, Knowest thou not what these be? And I said, No, my Lord. And he answered and spake unto me, saying, This is the word of the Lord unto Zerubbabel, saying, Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord of hosts. Who art thou, O great mountain? Before Zerubbabel thou shalt become a plain. And he shall bring forth the headstone thereof with shoutings, crying, Grace, grace unto it. Moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, The hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation of this house, and his hands shall also finish it. And thou shalt know that the Lord of hosts has sent me unto you. For who hath despised the day of small things? For they shall rejoice, and shall see the plummet in the hand of Zerubbabel with those 7. They are the eyes of the Lord, which run to and fro through the whole earth. Then answered I, and said unto him, What are these 2 olive trees upon the right side of the candlestick, and upon the left side thereof? And I answered again, and said, What be these 2 olive branches, which through 2 golden pipes empty the golden oil out of themselves? And he answered me and said, Knowest thou not what these be? And I said, No, my Lord. Then he said, These are the 2 anointed ones that stand by the Lord of the whole earth. Now, not going to go through every verse in this chapter, but we're continuing the picture of a temple. This temple, all they had done was laid the foundation, and then they had walked away from it. They didn't finish it. It wasn't that they couldn't finish it, it was the fact that they didn't finish it. And 2 prophets come and prophesy to them and said, Why did you leave the temple? Why did you quit building the temple? God says to go and finish the temple. The temple needs to be finished. But they were under very much extreme poverty and trouble, living in a city where the walls are broken down. There's rubble everywhere. They didn't have houses when they got there. They didn't have farms. They didn't have vineyards. They didn't have the things that they were growing for their own sustenance even. They had to build life up from the ground up, and they got very quickly discouraged because it was too much. And so they had dropped the building of the temple, which was what they had been sent to do. And so he brings Zechariah a vision. And in this vision, there's a candlestick made out of gold. A golden bowl on top of it. 7 golden lamps with 7 pipes that go into the bowl. So here we've got a lamp with 7 outlets. 7 flames can burn coming out of a bowl. But then there's more, because on the 2 sides of the candlestick, there's an olive tree growing on the one side and an olive tree growing on the other side. And these olive trees are doing something very magical. They are making oil of themselves. They are not, nobody is there picking the olives and pressing the olives. The olive trees are simply growing there, and there is pipes going from the olive trees to this bowl. And the olive tree is just creating oil, and the oil is flowing. And so there is a continual, non-stop flame going on this candlestick. 7 candles, 7 candlesticks, 7 pipes going to the one bowl. The one bowl on top of a candlestick, 2 olive trees with branches and pipes going from the olive trees to the bowl. And there's a continual cycle of the lamp that is lit. 7 lamps burning, 2 olive trees growing, olive oil flowing. I didn't ever know. I never got this connection until this morning. I was reading this chapter. Did you know that this is a prophecy about golden harvest from the prophet? Did you realize that it was a golden candlestick, a golden bowl, golden lamps, golden pipes, and there's 2 olive trees on the right hand and on the left, and these 2 olive trees have 2 golden pipes that empty the golden oil out of themselves. This was a golden harvest, wasn't it? It was an old-time golden harvest. Everything was golden. That was amazing. Anyway, God truly shows to his people this day that they did not have to have the strength within themselves to build the temple. They got discouraged and quit, but it wasn't their resources that God was counting on to get the temple built. It was the resources of the very Spirit of God that God was counting on that was going to get the temple built. He did not need these men to have intelligence, to have wealth, to have their own houses, to have everything going well for them. What he needed them to do was rely on the continual provision of God, who, when he lights a lamp, he also supplies the oil for the lamp. And so, the oil coming from the two trees on the outsides of the candlestick supply the bowl that keeps the 7 lamps burning all the time. And all the people were in this picture, the only thing they were was men who could get into the flow of God, or they could remove themselves from the flow of God. They could quit the work on the temple and go home and build their own houses. But it wasn't them who was going to build the temple when the temple was built anyway. It was going to be God. They missed that point, and they thought in their discouragement that they did not have the resources to do what God told them to do. And so they went home and abandoned the project because it was too big. And God said, no, it's not going to be by might. No, it is not going to be by power, but it's going to be by my Spirit. And here's this man called Zerubbabel, who came from Babylon to Jerusalem to build the temple. And when he got here, he laid the foundation. And I'm telling you, his hands are going to finish it. It's not because Zerubbabel is an amazing man. He wasn't. He had quit the work of God. It wasn't because he was a man that never gave up. It wasn't. He did give up. But now God is stepping in and giving him the truth about what is going to happen. He says, by my Spirit, you are going to build the temple, and your hands are going to finish it. Jesus was the author, but he wasn't just the author of our faith. He is the finisher of our faith. And he gives us a life to live. We have the earthly side of our life. The physical creation. We have to eat. We have to build houses. We have to sleep. We even have to get married and raise families and so on. Some people don't have to, but I don't know how they do that. There's things that we have to do that's on the earthly side. But then there's a spiritual side. The spiritual side we can't do. It is way beyond us. It is way too big for us. There is no way that we have anything in us to accomplish the things on the spiritual side that need to be done. And we're more likely to become discouraged about the spiritual things and quit them than we are to become discouraged about the earthly things and quit them. But truly, the things of the spiritual side that God commanded us to do, he was not expecting us to do in our own strength. He was expecting to be the supplier. He was expecting to author the work and to finish the work. And all we were going to be was just the tool that gave ourselves to God and let him use us in the way that he wanted. And what I'm telling you this morning is we can't afford to not finish the things that God put in front of our face to do. We can't afford to not finish those. But as I started out saying, when we become people who don't finish the things we start, we don't pressure ourselves to get done the things we ought to do, we actually create bad character in ourselves. So while the things of this earth are less important, they still have a certain level of importance because they make or break who we are in our character. And if we are willing to change jobs every year, or go to new church every 2 years, or find new friends every 5 years, or divorce our wife every 20 years, whenever we get to a hill that we're not willing to climb, we just turn around and go backwards because that hill is too high or too hard. If we do that in earthly things, we will certainly never amount to anything in spiritual things, because we will do the same thing, because the spiritual things in life are harder than the earthly things. They're harder to get a handle on. They're harder to see the end. They're harder to understand what we're doing, or to feel like we have a clue what we're doing. And so if we can't get our earthly lives together, we certainly won't succeed in our spiritual lives. So I challenge every person here this morning that you pressure yourself just a little bit when you get to something hard, that you continue. There's kids in this room here who one day probably get married. It's important when you get married that that marriage lasts you your lifetime. But right now, you're trying to learn your math. Maybe some of you are trying to learn Spanish. Some of you are trying to learn a musical instrument. Some of you are trying to learn something else. If you get to the point where it's not fun anymore. Last year when I started this, it was fun. But right now, I'm not finding it to be fun. I think I'll quit and do something different. I'm afraid for your marriage. I'm afraid for your spiritual well-being. Because if you learn that character, where you never learn how to get through the things that are in front of you, you will fail when there's things that you have to get through. Because you learned when you were young to take the easy road and everything. We don't want to be that way. And so if there's young people growing up in this room today, when you start something, before you get excited to start the new thing, let's go back to the old thing that you started and try and finish it first. Or maybe you're working on 6 different things at the same time, as any young person probably is. Before we abandon any of those old things as not worth doing because they became too hard or too boring, as oftentimes the case is, before we decide to abandon them, let's finish them first. And those of you who are working jobs, monotonous jobs in this world where there's no fun, before you decide to change jobs, maybe you just consider the fact of changing your attitude first. It may be that changing jobs is a slightly difficult thing, and changing your attitude might be actually quite an easy thing if you tried. If you gave it any work, it might actually be quite an easy thing. And you might find that a little bit of an attitude change opened up a whole new world to you. Now, again, I'm not saying there's nothing saying here. I don't want anybody to walk away believing that I said you should never change anything or quit anything. Sometimes there's things we ought to quit. Sometimes there's things we're doing that we shouldn't be doing. It's a waste of time in life, and we ought to quit. And those things we should quit today and be like, forget it. That was never something I ever should have started. Let's be done with this and go on to something that's more spiritual or more profitable. But in the spiritual things that God has called us to, we don't work that way. When God has called us to a work, and we start out with a leap of excitement and faith, and then 6 months later it didn't work, and we hunt for that new thing, and we start out again in something new with a leap of excitement, and it doesn't work, and 6 months later we're looking for the next thing. We're never going to accomplish anything for God that way. He needs people that are willing to finish the work that He's given them to do. That's what God is looking for, someone who wants to finish the work. Let's take a break.